We firmly believe that Black women are not only magical, but we are as invaluable and powerful as vibranium. Our podcast is dedicated to empowering Black and Brown women to embrace the transformative power of astrology and tarot. Through these intuitive arts, the Melanated Mystics will guide you to explore and connect with your deep inner magic and help you to finally release the burdens of Black Superwoman syndrome. It's time to redirect our energies inward and prioritize ourselves on this transformative journey of self-discovery. All right, welcome back, all of you beautiful beings, to the Melanated Mystics. We have got an amazing topic for you, and it's actually a topic out of order, y'all. Like, we have a whole roster of topics, but in our weekly check-in, Karrie brought this one, and it was so fire. We're like, yeah, whatever. Push that one to the top. Push that one to the top of the list. And Karrie, I know it's maybe a little cheese ball, but I'm a Black girl nerd, and I love a quote. And after we finished talking about what the topic was going to be for this week, I was like, let me just go look and see what I can find about this topic. And this was the quote that I came upon. Black women, we deserve deep and abiding love. We deserve love without having to struggle, without having to prove ourselves worthy, without having to be the ride or die girl. Love, loyalty, and respect just because we have a beautiful soul. That is by, let me make sure I see the name of our author there, because of course we have to drop her name. That is by Janet Authorine, and that's from The Heart and Soul of Black Women, Poems of Love, Struggle, and Resilience. And so with that, let's go ahead and jump into our topic, which is Black women and our allegiance to suffering. Karrie, please tell us how and why you came up with this topic and why you felt like now was a great time for us to jump into that.
I'll tell you why. I'll start first, though, with that quote resonated so much with me, especially the part that says, just because we have such beautiful hearts. Do you know? Just because. And the reason why it resonates with me, because it makes me think of who I think of daily, my personal shiro, Jodie Turner-Smith, okay? Because she is in what I call one of the, though a fantastic film, one of the, Black women allegiance to suffering big movies, which was Queen and Slim, okay? And Jodie Turner-Smith being so opposite that character in real life, but like the way that Queen character was revered for her allegiance, not only to this man and to the community and to this situation, but to her, the suffering that we got to go out like this. I just really felt that quote and made me think of Jodie Turner-Smith. I think of her often because she's like my personal guiding star. I do what she does, okay? The reason it came up for me, this whole, wait a minute, wait a minute, what is this allegiance to suffering? Is because I've been thinking lately a lot about the way that we're going about healing as Black women. It's happening. Astrologically, this is the time that it's meant to happen for everybody. But the way you go about healing doesn't have to be any certain kind of way. In fact, I have a lot of joy the way I go about my healing. Now I'm very much in my shadow, like, oh my God, is that another shadow? Let me look at that. Let me get sexy with it. Let me how can I accept and integrate this shadow, right? But I've noticed that, on social media and just out in the world, that when it comes to Black women, there is this lamenting about healing. Oh, one more time, one more thing I got to do, what you mean I got to put my feet up now, and I started going, where is that coming from? And I also noticed it in my own experiences with my divorce, where I was noticing that I was carrying this, somebody's got to suffer through this, right? Like if we're going through something and someone's got to blame, so it might as well be me because I know how to do this, right?
Girl, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that really hurt when you said that. Like, might as well be me.
Might as well be me. Because I know how to do it, right? Because I got the resume, look at my, which, I had, I would, be talking to different girlfriends, you talk to people as you go through your divorce, the experiences and all that. And some of my girlfriends would just be like, girl, who am I talking to? Just like, why do you have to suffer? They're just like, why aren't you out painting the town? Like, what is going on? And I would just be like, oh, like I'm trying to process things. They're like, girl, you don't got to process nothing. They're like, you process for the rest of your life. Every day is a process of this. And so I started really investigating that within myself. Why do I have this allegiance to suffering? Even my therapist, amazing somatic therapist, by the way, down in California, I'll leave his name in the credits and all that. He was like, why are you holding this crest, like a Scottish crest up? Like I'm the one that remembers the marriage. You the one who left the marriage. You the one who wanted to leave. So why do you have to still suffer? It's because of your decision. So this is what I wanted to bring up today is that, we go through things in life, but for Black women, there's this allegiance to suffering simply because we have the degree already. We might as well use our degree, our education and suffering. That goes way back, by the way. To use it because nobody else is going to pick it up if you don't.
And to that, in response to that, I'll jump in on where I come from on this topic. And it will always go back to Mississippi. It will always go back to girlhood. And I care so much because it's a Mississippi memory, girl. I got a sack full of them. But I care so much about this because I have I'm raising maidens, right? Like my 2 rock star warrior princesses. And because I remember I think so much about how am I going to teach them this? Like, how am I going to prepare them for life, for work, for relationships? So I take, I take that very seriously. And of course, Leo, I'm very interested and I'm a Black woman that's very interested in myself. I have to think back, where the fuck did I learn that? And I learned it with mother's milk. I just learned it growing up that to be suffering is our fate. And not only is it our fate as Black women, we're supposed to do it enthusiastically. We're supposed to just hold out our hands and take it. It's just it is just guaranteed. And that is one way or another, whether it's in school, whether it's in even in places where we're supposed to feel powerful in love, like the church, like sorority meeting, like whatever. No, it's always got to be some mess. And like, that's just our lot. And I was even taught, at least by example, that how tirelessly you accept it is a show of your virtue and your worth. By how soundless you are about it, how you just accept it, how you push through. Think of like the first lady of the church and all the shit like she's had to go through. Like you're still supposed to say, and this is just, if this is God's plan for me, like I take it and I receive it. And that it's even like if I wanted to be a good woman, that's what I had. Like that's what was required. And I'm just going to say I rejected that early on. I will never forget thinking for why? Like what? Like I'm supposed to do what? Somehow I don't feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. Even going back to being shooed out of the house to like go outside and play. That's not who I was. I was very much a sit in the corner in the cool, reading a book. I'll even wash dishes, polish furniture or whatever, but I'm not trying to be outside like in the Mississippi heat. But it was almost like, no, you're supposed to want to do that. You're supposed to do what makes you uncomfortable. So as you can imagine, once I, going through therapy and processing all that, I was really freaking angry about it. And because I saw it in so many places, even in the work that I chose to do, I was like, it must be hard because the examples I see of all the Black women in my life, of their job is just freaking hard. Like it's very worthy jobs, right? But you're always bone tired jobs, like requiring crazy hours jobs. And then, it never ends on the weekends. I was even taught that to be hired by somebody else and have like a straight job wasn't as worthy as being an entrepreneur and owning your own business. Because if you were really like a boss, oh yeah, girl, like my mom owned her own law firm and it was always, at least this was my impression as a child, was that, just, she got to show up to work for somebody, but Karrie, being an entrepreneur, is there anything more difficult and more engaging than being an entrepreneur? You're thinking about it all the time. You're thinking about your work, what you got to do, what never ends. And you're like, people, relationships, why are y'all trying to have a relationship with me? I'm trying to.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
This is a conversation I have every day.
So that's where I'm coming from with it. So I think I'm still kind of in my resentful, rebellious teenager. Why? And if there's going to be a revolution towards accepting the soft life, giving up this allegiance to suffering, that's the side I'm on. Because we never should have had. At least we should have had the option. And I just feel like we never had the option.
This is why I love astrology so much, because I will always say, astrology, the world will tell you who they think you are, but astrology will tell you who you really are. And you listen to this story of you talking about I would, instead of going out to play in the heat in Mississippi, I would have rather sat on the porch and read a book and had a nice breeze come by and had maybe a cool lemonade, there was nothing wrong with that. But there was an undercurrent, an energetic undercurrent of there is something wrong with that. I do remember anytime resting when I was a child, there would be just a family member walk by, but well, what you doing? What are you doing? Must I be doing something? And then that is the thing though, even out in the world. Well, what are you doing, Black woman? Where are you going? What? Maybe I'm just walking around, So there is this kind of interesting thing from our culture and from our community and from our families that are just you must be doing something of use. And I'm glad you mentioned that story, because I wanted us, I think our title kind of speaks for it, Black women and allegiance to suffering. But for those who are confused, I wanted to give a couple of examples of what this suffering looks like and how the different forms that it can take. Okay. For one, receiving validation or reward for exhausting yourself, right? And I'm going to say this, we do play into it. Black women play into it. How many times have we been I'm going to do all this work and then you better, put my feet up when I come home. You better, my kids better do this for me, right? There is this kind of us playing into that as well. Look at what I did for you, right? And getting validation from other sources instead of from ourselves. So one is reward for exhausting yourself. Two, being of use, the constant being of use, right? The validation from being of use, because what would they say? Idle hands, that whole thing. You can't just be sitting there. Why? Why can't I just be sitting there? Being of use. If you're sitting there, for me, I always had to do my chores before I could enjoy anything, right? And that was just such a setup, because I think through life, there's this little, record player that goes in and goes, oh, I don't want to do that because I might have to do some extra stuff. I don't want to accept pleasure, because what am I going to have to do for that? So it just sets up these kind of strings, and then you kind of reject pleasure because I already think I'm going to have to give up something for it.
Karrie, it would be really nice if you would just get out of my diary and my personal story. I didn't consent to have every aspect of my childhood talked about. Girl, okay, I have to interject. As you say that, especially the part where we would sometimes reject the opportunity for pleasure because the price to pay, the suffering we'd have to lay down for was too much. There were times friends were asking my mom to go do something. The cavalcade, the onslaught, the deluge, if you will, of how ungrateful I am, how selfish I am, how I don't think about anybody else, how this house hasn't been thoroughly cleaned, the tires haven't been rotated, the garage the roof hasn't been recovered, and you want to go to the movies, Halicue? What? And so there were times literally where I was girl, I can't go. I don't even want to ask my mom. I can't. So I just wanted to sound off on that, and I'm going to press mute and cry while you continue.
You're like, hold me, just go, girl, go in the fetal position, because we all are probably on the floor right now in a fetal position, because think about the pleasure that you deny yourself on a regular basis, from out in public to in your own bedroom, to in your own body, because, well, what am I going to have to do? What has to be done first? Yeah. Okay. And then I'm going to get to the third one that is one of the, constant things, the way this allegiance to suffering can show up. And that is in the form of avoiding rejection by accepting breadcrumbs. So the way this shows up is, you dating somebody, right? And they don't call you for a while, may ghost you a little bit, and then they come back in. And then you're all excited, oh, they came back, And then you're like, they do it again. But you never bring up that they did it in the first place. What this is basically you're trying to avoid rejection. If you bring it up, this person might say, you know what, I'm not that into you anyway, this ain't working out. Or so in order to avoid rejection, you dismiss your own needs, dismiss your own pleasure, dismiss your minimum standard of what you will accept into your life in order to avoid the rejection or to get the reward for the suffering, right? Because you can take that to your girlfriend's, girl, this is what he did. And then she can be like, yeah, this is what he did. And then you both just sitting there suffering, ha ha ha, right? But not getting what you need or you want. So this can also take the form of relationships, absolutely. It takes the form of jobs and money, absolutely. How many times you hemmed and hawed over asking for a raise, or had to bring a whole presentation as to why you deserved something. This, and then look what I did. Oh, look at how long I stayed up making this presentation to show you my worth, So this goes deep. And, I'm going to be really a little bit controversial here. I have a coach that I work with, and she calls this slave codes. And it doesn't have to do with race or gender. It goes across lines. Slave is a slave, right? So it's like slave codes, an allegiance to something. But what it is more an allegiance to a system. And so this is what we're trying to break open today. And it's something that I'm so lucky to be an astrologer. I'm able to go into my astrology chart and find my own slave codes and then get them the fuck out.
I would love for us to jump right into that. And that's a beautiful, perfect transition into it, because similarly in tarot, there are cards, there are images, like there are archetypes, like when they show up, whether they're showing up for me and my own personal work or the work I'm doing for like my sisters or my clients, that let me know that they may be what Karrie's coach calls an indicator, like a marker of, or a sign. Sometimes it's a giant ass neon sign, like pointing to that allegiance to suffering. And that even if we're, making strides to heal and experience more joy. And Karrie, I love the way you said that too. Y'all, if you're new to any kind of metaphysical or spiritual practice, just understand nothing has to be spooky. Nothing has to be scary. So much of it, when I first decided to connect with my ancestors, I said, would y'all please come to me in laughter and rainbows and animals and flowers and things like that. I was like, because y'all know I'm traumatized and I have a high startle response. So thank you so much for saying that. So now let's go ahead and jump into the stars of it, Karrie. Go ahead and lead us on in.
So this is, I believe that the first step to healing is awareness, period. And unfortunately, it is the step that most people don't take. So they never get to it, right? Because that's scary. Let me go eat something. Let me go play a game. Let me go, let me go distract myself. That's scary, right? But awareness, all you're doing is bringing awareness. And whatever you bring awareness to is already the medicine. It's already on its way out because you've simply brought awareness to it. A lot of times with Black women, we are willing to be aware of something, okay? But then we are not willing to take an aligned action about it. It usually stops with the, girl, let me tell you this, let me talk to you about this. And then that's it. That nothing aligned action, right? So the first step is awareness. Oh my God, am I doing this? This keeps showing up. This is a pattern, right? And then what I like to do is if I'm not totally understanding, I'm not in the meat of it, I go look at my astrology chart and I say, okay, what's happening for me natally? What's in my natural blueprint for suffering? Okay. And then what's happening transit wise? Like what's in the stars right now that's kind of hitting different parts of my chart, that I can look at. So when I am looking at something like an allegiance to suffering, noticing a pattern that I keep doing that, the first thing I'm going to look at is where Saturn is in my chart. Okay. Saturn is the big daddy. All right. The big zaddy, actually. I think Saturn's quite sexy. People always are like, oh, Saturn means challenges and obstacles. And I was like, girl, that is where the fun is, right? Because then you get to like surrender and do all this amazing stuff. Saturn represents challenges and obstacles in your chart. Yes, right? It's part of life. That's what we go through. But think of challenges and obstacles as homework or tests that you take in school. Like you don't got to do it bad. You don't got to suffer through it. So just homework, right? It's just a test, right? You pass, you fail, you learn, you move on to the next thing, right? So think of it more as, hey, here's a little lovely test that I get to see where I'm at, where I'm at in my education and universe school, okay? So Saturn, where it sits on your chart, also represents maturity and where you are meant to mature and overcome something in order to become the master at it. And that's what the sexy part comes in. I'm going to master this thing now. I'm not going to be confused. Confusion's not sexy.
As we all rush to our charts to look at our Saturn placements right now, that's literally what I'm doing. I'm literally looking as you talk because I'm like, oh, lecture format. I love this. It's one of the things I miss that about college. Anyway, keep going.
This is what I try to also, I coach a lot of men in my astrological counseling. I have lots of male clients. I think they just I have a very practical approach when I'm doing this. So it's like tangible, usable, right? And what I'm always trying to say to men is like, don't run from the challenge. You're going to get like the masculine needs a challenge, like the masculine, that's where the sexy, that's where the meat comes from. Like you played with your food. All right. That's what you want. You don't want to just be like, oh, here's your porridge, sir. Like then you get bored with it and you just whatever. Right. So what I'd say a lot, and I have a lot of male clients, but I also speak to my female clients or anything in between because we carry both polarities, right? That your Saturn is where you're meant to go into the challenge, go into, oh, you think I can't do that? Let me show you. Let me show you what's up, right? So Saturn in your chart is your lifelong challenge. If you're in the Olympics, this is what you're training for every day. You get up at 4:00, you go to the pool, you ice skate, you do whatever, right? You're training for this, right? Because there's gold on the other side. So wherever you have Saturn in your chart sitting natally is where you'll experience this, lifelong. Saturn is a freaking lifelong Nike ad. Okay. That's what it is. Just, you got this. You did that. Okay. That's what it is. Saturn is also the father of time though. So this is where we get this, there's this idea of having to endure something because wherever Saturn sits, it delays time. So I always say wherever you have natal Saturn is where you're going to be a late bloomer and you need to accept that. You're going to be a late bloomer in that area of life, right? Now, late bloomer means that you just become a master at it because you have done all the work for so long. Other folks, they, got a little overnight success and then they don't know what to do next, right? They got a business and now they're like, how do I make this business last longer? They don't know because it came real quick, right? This is where you're a master at this. People like, Kanye West, he's got, I believe, Saturn in the 10th house. And so does Oprah, by the way. So these are people who are quote unquote late bloomers. I mean, we think that they're not late bloomers, but if you ask them, I would ask Kanye, I'd ask Oprah, do they think they're done yet? Do they think they got to where no? They would say no. It should have happened a long time ago, right? Because they came out the womb with a briefcase wanting to be successful in this area.
With Oprah, as you say that, the thing that I think about, and one of the ways I saw my struggle reflected in Oprah was with her weight and how now Oprah's probably as close to as healthy weight looking satisfied, confident as I feel like I've ever seen her. And it's not even a fucking issue. Like she doesn't even talk about it. Like doesn't even talk about it anymore. When before there was so much energy and working so hard, and she wants to bring, like a lot of us, right? Like we get healed. I want to bring everybody along with me. I'm going to do this cookbook. And turns out it was still a struggle, still swung back the other way. And yeah, like, and what is Oprah in her 60s now? And looks like she got it. She's rocking it. Anyway, I just wanted to observe that.
Because Oprah has a figure, like, you know what I'm saying? Oprah, okay? Oprah always had that cute figure. And so this was her thing. You know, this was her thing. This was her Saturn. This was her thing to become a master at, right? And so I use them as examples because they probably didn't have to struggle through that if they understood that this was a lifelong thing. Like, right, think about this right now. If you understand something to be a lifelong thing, you maybe take a step back. You're like, hey, let me preserve my energy on that struggle business, you know, because it's going to be around for a while, right? So that's where you can start to break that down, that allegiance to suffering. I'm in a learning mode. This doesn't have to happen right now, right? And so this is where we can break that down. So wherever you have Saturn, and we will, do some tutorials about this, some lives so that we can help y'all, because you see Halicue going to her chart. Y'all want to go to your charts too, right? So we're going to do some tutorials about that. But looking to see where your natal Saturn is and where you have a lifelong kind of allegiance to suffering, and then asking, why do I have to suffer through that? Maybe I don't. You're always going to want to look. The second place you want to look on your chart is your 12th house. Woof. I got too much in the 12th house, 3 planets in 12th house. 12th house is our psychic house. So it is our links to the karmic energy. It's our links to our family lineage. So some of this stuff you're operating in your lane of suffering off somebody else's gas. Okay. So you're pulling it from somewhere else. Don't even need to be here, right? So 12th house represents our unconscious. It also represents the womb, the WOMB. This is inheritance, psychological inheritance, and cellular energy we inherited from our mothers during gestation. So just putting this into perspective, these things didn't come from you. You don't have to go about them the way that the society has set up that you should be, quote unquote, going about them. And always think about who benefits from you suffering. Think about this, really, because sometimes it's people you don't want to look at. But again, look into the shadow. Who does it? Who benefits? Sometimes it's my own child. Sometimes it's my spouse. Sometimes it's my family, my culture, parent. And then oftentimes it's ourselves. We get something from diving into some suffering like this. And you got to investigate that. So those are the places you look for that natally. What planets do you have going on in your 12th house? What's unseen to you? Unseen suffering. And if there are any planets transiting your 12th house at that time, they'll give you an idea of how long you'll be feeling that allegiance to suffering. And then if you have any Saturn, you have to look at the house that Saturn is transiting to get an idea of like, how long am I going to be feeling this allegiance to suffering? And then the third thing, after you found the awareness, and after you have looked and found, where this is showing up on your chart, then the third thing is to make the choice that maybe I can dance at my own funeral. Do you know what I'm saying? Do I have to? Maybe I can have some fun with this, enduring. Maybe I'll have a party, invite some people over. We talk about all the things we endure. So that's what I'm saying is like, this is a shift of perspective. The awareness comes first. The direction in your chart comes second. And then the third is I made a choice that I'm going to do this with joy. And that's how you work your way out.
The reason there's a pause is because I'm literally I'm taking notes for myself. I'm reminding myself to share with our listeners, and I'm going to share right now. Karrie has given us a for real to-do, like a practical to-do list. I am such a fan of quote unquote practical magic. Like, how can I take exactly what I listened to today, and when I am in a quandary, when I am like, why does this hurt? Like, why does my body hurt? Why is my heart hurting? Why can't I get no peace of mind? Like, why can't I get any sleep? What you have just shared for us, like, that's an assignment. And for those of us that like an assignment, please go back and listen. I'm going to try to encapsulate it Karrie, maybe we can try to do that in our heart work, like at the end, and make it easy for folks to get their decks out and get their charts out and deep dive into that. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful for that. I would love to jump into the cards that I use and the cards that I see in other people's readings that give us an idea of, oh, maybe this is, in combination with what I'm learning about my own astrology or in trying to work out my own path forward, because I believe, nothing is more useful than the tarot and helping to chart a course forward. If you're the kind of person that loves words, it's like the difference between Twitter, like helping you figure something out, and Instagram helping you figure something out, right? Like looking at it. And for somebody like me, like, I'm always looking for myself or some illustration or archetype of, that's how I feel. Like that contains the energy. Or sometimes it's wonderful to set yourself the challenge of what are the details back there that make sense for me that maybe I haven't been. All right. So y'all know the way I love to go at things, because if I go at it this way, I know I haven't left anything out. And you hear me say it all the time, no matter where I podcast or where y'all hear me, earth, air, fire, water. That's why I love tarot, because when it all comes together, we get spirit. And that's that's the most important thing. So let's talk about how we might see, feel what seems to be generational and chronic addiction to suffering. We are going to heal ourselves from this in this generation. Earth, air, fire, water. Let's get started with the physical body. Sometimes I love being a Black woman. We are so magic. And personally, I'm beginning to feel and believe that the less we acknowledge that magic, the less we practice it, the less we explore it, the sicker we get, the more in physical pain we are. And so when we're talking about that, when we're talking about the physical body, or, like even pain and suffering of the physical body in your own home. Like we all know somebody that don't even want to go home, that will sit in the car for 15 minutes, getting your last seconds of peace before you even walk into your own home. Cause ain't nothing there but a headache, a stomach ache, or literally the physical labor of having to cook, clean, and do all of this labor. So let's talk about what that might look like. And let's go in numeric order in the tarot. Once we start getting to the fives, it doesn't matter where it is in the tarot, like that kind of sucks. It is the absolute hardest part. And so let's go to the 5 of Pentacles, right? Because Pentacles are about, that earth energy and everything earth. Ooh. Yeah. I know, I hate when this card shows up for me or for anybody else. Cause then I'm like, yeah, I don't care what you're saying. Something is affecting you physically. And this is where, I explain to people that I am a hoodoo, but I need your ass to go to your doctor. Like I want you to I need you going to your annual exams. I want you doing your physicals and go to the acupuncturist, your chiropractor, like whatever you need to do. And so quite simply, 5 of Pentacles, and we see that we're talking about literal physical suffering in the body. Note the figures. When all of these figures, we know the tarot comes out of 14th and 15th century Italy and France. And so what do we see? We see some images that, would have been in, medieval Europe. We see someone wearing the beggar's bell or the leper's bell, their feet, there's no shoes, their poor freezing feet are bound up in cloth. They're ragged. They're ragged. They're in so much pain. They're fighting the elements sometimes. And we know sometimes it feels like a blizzard in our own home, right? Or in our own body. Sometimes it feels like we're suffering through a storm. And so when I see this is when I think, oh, okay. All right. No matter. And when it's always very stressful for me as a reader and it totally gets into my clairsentience and I get a little rattled because in that moment, I'm like, oh, look at that beautiful outside and look at what's hurting on the inside. And that resonates with me because I know a lot of us go out looking like we could literally be on the cover of Essence and we are.
Yes.
Right. Karrie's like assenting, like we are so hurting on the inside. And oh goodness, the idea of having to go to work, like our job, show up for our children, show up in front of a classroom to teach and our work environment. So when I see that, I think, oh, okay. where is the pain physically? How are we gonna, like you need to start doing some, that's when the power of meditation, that air energy is so helpful in doing a meditation where you do a body scan starting at the freaking top of your head or the bottom of your feet to figure out where is it, like where does it sit, like where is it hurting, and to help identify where is their help. Because these figures are literally outside of a place where there is sanctuary, where there's warmth, where there's light, where everyone is welcome, where everyone can find some comfort, at least temporarily, or succor, right? We see that in the stained glass windows that make up the 5 panes. So whether this to you represents community, your community of healing, your sister's circle, the doctor's office, the therapist's office, identifying what help is out there, like what is available to you, what is close to you that you haven't been thinking about because you are so consumed with your pain, right? Like, and your suffering, literally physical suffering. I remember when I first started studying tarot, and when you first get your first deck, and this is like decades ago, but like when you're looking in the little book or whatever, we had an internet and stuff back when I was a kid, and I couldn't look up tarot really in the encyclopedia at that point. It wasn't really thinking that was someplace I could go, or I didn't have it digitally, and I damn sure in my early 20s didn't have a set of encyclopedias. That was where I remember the, actual pain and physical suffering. So that's one of the first ones I see. And now the little king, let's go on over here to the 4 of Pentacles. We're still in that earth energy, still talking about the physical body, your physical environment, your home, resources, money, that kind of thing. The little king is a hot mess. This is a young lord. This is a young lord or lady that has a great deal. They, we see their little small kingdom or fiefdom behind them, wearing a small crown. We see the pentacle on the head, holding it, and two pentacles or coins, resting under their feet. They're a hot mess. Like in the traditional version of the card, their shoes don't match. And you can even see that this is holding on real tight. This is what I would call like suffering in a very real lack mentality, not having enough, hanging on to our resources so tight. And for some of us, this is paradoxical because some of us have so much, right? Like have so much. It reminds me of somebody that I know, actually, like a dear friend, the first person in their family to make it. And they have made it very big, but they're very reluctant to spend the money, very reluctant to have any show of the money or enjoy the money or the resources they have because everyone comes to them. Like everyone, and sometimes for us as Black women, we know as people close to us that with one hand will show up at our graduations, like patting us on the back on the same time, talk like, she thinks she all that because she got that degree, or she thinks she's all that because she got that bonus, or she got that job, or got that raise. And you have to sit there knowing, and the same cousin, the same auntie is going to call me in 2 months talking about, I need help with something. Like it's a tough place. So we wonder, how would we find ourselves in a low king situation like that? Like not spending it on ourselves because God forbid we do something, buy something, go someplace when Joanne and them may need to rent like in 2 months. So I noticed like that we've all had to deal with. So when I see this, I think, holding on very tight, holding on so tight. One of my favorite iterations of this card, I talk about this a lot. It's another deck, but it shows somebody with 2 pentacles under their arms and they're holding 2 pentacles in their hands like suitcases, and there's a closed door in front of them. It becomes, oh yeah, like that's one, and it actually comes across like kind of cartoony, but I'm like, that's deep. Like you're holding on so hard you can't even open the door to what? Opportunity, the love of your life, moving to picking up and go to Ghana to live out your dream of,
burn some sage or something. I'm like, where's my crystals? Like, I'm like, I'm exercising something. Okay, go ahead.
Maybe it's time to start taking care of the physical body. How do we take this and we flip this? And this is where I think, no, this is where I really, sometimes the remediation is wrapping literally, and especially when we're talking about it, thinking about like Taurian energy, like it needs to be tactile. It needs to smell good. It needs to feel good. It needs to be soft. It needs to make you feel, even if it's a $10 blanket from Target, when you're wrapped up in that and you're eating your microwave popcorn, you feel like a queen. Like you feel like this is this little comfort. So those are some archetype symbols and things to think about and like work through when we see those cards. Let's go to air. In the tarot, air, our mentality, what is going on in our mind space. ideas, communication. But when we're suffering, quite often, it's our cares, concerns, our anxieties. I talk about the Eight of Swords all the time. This is one of my favorite cards. This was the card of 2020 for me, releasing myself from the freaking jail of other people's ideas. I talk about this all the time, living a life based on my worries about what other people are thinking and how suffocating that is, how paralyzing that is. Like we see this figure, like literally loosely bound, very loosely bound, but still in a state of, of paused animation. I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. I can't see what I want because I'm dealing with this jail of expectations or must-dos from other people. And of course, the good news of that is that this ain't even a real jail. This is like a jail of swords stuck in murky ground. You could literally shrug yourself out of this. But I think sometimes the challenge for us as Black and brown women is, but what will so-and-so think? Like, what will mom and daddy think? What will big mama think? What will they think of me back? What will they think of me back home? What if I want to move? What if I want a different life? What if I don't want to do it like this? What if my prosperity or whatever it is I'm earning or doing, I want to go live off the grid someplace, not necessarily put up some McMansion, some mansion somewhere. Like, what am I not doing? How am I not living to my fullest best self because of what somebody else is saying? So when I see something like that, I'm like, oh, okay, that's where I know I need to go with my counseling. That's where I need to offer this up as an invitation to, all right, well, now what if this is not yours? What, what are you doing or what are you living in that has nothing to do with you? This, of course, whenever we see this, I don't even have to explain this card to clients when they see this and it comes up. I literally, 9 times out of 10, I get a tear. I'm like, yeah, because your sleep is messed up. Like, we're getting to the point where what's going on in the mental, the cares, concerns, the things unsaid, right? And when we see a 9, we know we're getting ready to get to a 10. I'll over here 2 with the 9 of Wands. But we know when we get here, we see those swords above the bed. That's, again, not a coincidence. Everything that's in the card is there for a reason, and we're here to investigate. This means a disturbed sleep. Things, the cares, concerns, anxieties, the things unspoken, or the constant onslaught of communication. Quite often this comes up too when people are in abusive relationships, when the just technology is being used or every message that comes at you is pointed and flying. Some of us, and again, as Black women, where I may see this is, say we're in a co-parenting relationship and we're still healing, so we haven't established good boundaries, and we think because we've created a person with this person, it's we're still trying to be in communication. We're still trying to encourage them, use our time, our energy, our thoughts. I've seen women twist themselves in knots trying to communicate with a partner who just does not want to be a spouse, who just does not want to parent, who is unable to do it. And she feels like a failure because she's not able to coach him through it, teach him through it, tell him how to do it. And after a little while, that racks up to a point to where it is overwhelming and it starts to manifest itself literally, physically, and effing with your sleep. When we see that, and clearly we see the person with their hand, their face in their hands, that's suffering. And these last 2, let's get to Cups. I know I could go on and on about this, but 5 of Cups, that's pretty simple. We see that draped figure, head down, shoulders slumped, literally in a mourning cape. They have 5 cups, again, the 5s in the middle, the hardest part. And, the cups represent emotions. They represent our feelings, relationships with other people, just like with the 5 of Pentacles, pain and suffering in the body. This is pain and suffering in the heart. This is the pain and suffering of emotions. There's a river running through, there's a bridge that is sitting in the background, and there are 5 cups. 3 have been knocked over and have spilled to the ground, which represents what we have lost. And I always want to remind people as a very general, if you're using this podcast, and we hope you are, Karrie and I are going to give you more along those lines. If you're using this as a way to learn your tarot, I would like to, in a very general way, invite you to think about what remains? What are the 2 cups that are still upstanding? And to remind yourself when you look at this card, all isn't lost. A lot was lost, but all hasn't. And these are going to be the 2 things. Whatever is the elixir or the liquid in these cups are going to be what you pick up, what you ingest, or what you look in, or you scry in, or whatever. They're going to help you, in the words of Jay-Z, cry a river, build a bridge, and get over it, right? Because that's what we see there, the river, the bridge, and the city. This is where we know we need to do that. And finally, my favorite, if there was any, I hate that in this deck, which is one of my new favorite decks because it's so colorful. And I think I'm going to start recrying it for students or recommending it for students that are studying with me because it's so vibrant. It's also it is actually very multicultural, but all these figures seem to be very pale in hue. I hate that it's not a little bit more representative, but Lord knows Black women carry enough suffering, so it's okay if we don't see it like that in these cards. But what do we have finally? 9 of Wands. Look at this poor soul. This is so many of us, and this is what we're going to be moving on from. We see the figure. They are tired. They are standing in a fatigued way in front of very similarly to the 8 of Swords and kind of this, the wands are, which represent fire, right? Creativity, that spark in us, the thing that gives us our light, that gives us our glow. I like to think of the wands, and I love the wands because they're about you. In my reading and in my practice and the way, I read and interpret, I love using the wands to just talk about you. I'm not talking about your man. I'm not talking about your kids. I'm not talking about your mama. I'm not talking about your sister. We're talking about you. And we see similarly a wall that's built up. And this is the card of, I am soldiering on. I am tired. I am weary. I have been through so much. I am still standing, and I'm giving y'all a side eye. I'm giving everything that comes up to me, as the lady says on TikTok, bombastic side eye. Like, I am giving everything a side eye. I'm still strong enough to defend myself, but damn, I am tired. And the thing that I think about when I think about us, our suffering, and what we need to investigate and work on and work through in order to move through this, is that bandage across the head. You remember Karrie talking about the 12th house and the house perhaps of our psychic wounding and what we need to work through. That's what I think of when I think of that, when I look at that bandage. Like, what is it? How have we, what are the stars we were born under? What are the circumstances that have given us this wound? Where are we in the healing? And how can we heal in a way so that scar that is left, as always is a reminder for us. Did you ever know anybody that has got a scrape or got a scar because of some foolishness and some fuckery? And the scar has turned into something for somebody particular that I know that I love very much. That scar has gone, I think, from being the symbol of shame to it's a battle scar. This is what I went through. This is what makes me.
You're giving Harry Potter right now.
Harry Potter, right? Like when you see that, it's kind of like, oh, pitiful, the baby. But then it's but that scar is how his intuition, or he knows danger is coming, or the level of things. So that's what I'm thinking of when I see that bandage, and that represents us. And it's so pitiful because sometimes it's I'm still here. I'm still standing, but I have learned from each and every one of these wands that's standing. In the background, I've built a house out of the battles that I have fought and made the way I construct them. May they serve to protect me. May they serve to teach me. So these are the things that I'm looking for. And granted, and Karrie, I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna turn it over for your response. But if it feels like I'm going kind of deep into this and doing it in a very different way than a lot of tarot readers y'all might see on Beyonce's internet, is because a lot of my work from the time I was out of college, because I thought, Karrie, I needed to have the hardest fucking job. Since I wasn't going to be a lawyer like my mom, I needed to do a job that was so hard, that reached the most suffering us, which was working in domestic violence, sexual assault, and reproductive health care. That's what I gave myself over to. I'm not going to even get into the physical pain and shit, not knowing I was intuitive, not knowing I was clairsentient. I'm not even going to get into how sick and miserable I was in my 20s, because I was doing this work without knowing my magic, without knowing my astrology. I was only just starting to think about the tarot, which I kept as a deep, deep secret. But these are all the ways that I not only counseled women through, but thank God at the years that I'm at in my life, I know what that is. I've worked with women and held hands during pregnancy terminations, through picking women up at the police department, taking them to court, going to DHS, each and every card in the tarot I have seen through the eyes of a woman suffering either from abuse from her family or someone that they love. So if that's how that's coming across, that is why. And those are just a few. And for those of us that are, that are listening to this, go on over to YouTube so you can catch some of these visual teas that Karrie and I are talking about, because I think they'll be helpful to you. Karrie, I know that was a lot. Tell me what you think.
First of all, it's never too much. Okay. This was channeling we just witnessed here. Okay. Mediumship has occurred, right? So this is, you're getting coded is what I'm saying here. Every time you listen to what we're talking about, we have ideas of what we're going to say, but we always have more, and we always bringing down something from spirit and from source. And so to me, I feel it's a blessing. Thank you, Halicue. I feel so grateful for your delivery, because it's one thing to have a deck. It's one thing to have a chart. It's another to be able to deliver it in a way that people can understand and interpret and actually use. And that is the gift. That's the gift right there. What I wanted to say really quick, just in summation, one, I love tarot and I love the details of it. Astrology is very much symbols and it's accurate timing and it's predictions. And yes, I get it. That's me. I know that, right? Like that's my thing, the symbols and all that. But tarot, it's like it's almost like you're reaching into the card and you're pulling out this deeper interpretation that literally my body is responding to. That's why I kept doing my church fan, because I was like, I'm releasing some things here. Just the connection and the relation. And so we need those visuals. So for y'all who are not watching this, you need to go watch this on YouTube. The power of Halicue's readings, because I asked her to do a reading months ago for me around my divorce and around how that, what I could expect, how things were going to play out, just wanted some extra information, right? Because awareness is how we start healing. So I wanted to start healing before I even go through stuff, just tell me where I'm at on the timeline, right? And I remember Halicue pulled that 5 of Pentacles, girl. And I remember her delivery of it. It's that card with the people walking by the church. And she said, this is a time you're lean on your friends. She's like, there's going to be a hard part and the hardest part, and this is it. And when you are going through it, lean on your friends. They're everywhere. Now, did I remember that? No, I had to go back into the notes. Because when I got to maybe a month or two later, I started having medical issues, started having, stuff with came out of nowhere. Because when she first said that in the reading, I was just like, all right, girl, that sounds, okay. But you don't have any fathom, right? When it starts happening, you're like, oh, damn, I am having medical issues. What's going on? I thought maybe I get a cold, No, I started having some medical stuff. I had to go to the doctor. It was like multiple MRI scans. What's going on? I had blurry vision. I had some neuropathy. What was that?
I was gonna say, I was like, I don't want y'all to think Karrie had the sniffles either. Thank you for elaborating. When this stuff started happening, I was like, oh Lord, so when she says MRI, gives you an idea of the how startling it was.
The level of it, MRI, CT scans, two trips to the emergency room, just what is going on? Thinking I'm losing my sight, thinking I'm losing my mind. All right. And it is in those moments, of completely, when you're dealing with health and you're in it, right? You don't see what's around you. You don't see what's available to you. It was in that moment that I said, oh, Halicue, let me go look at those notes from that reading that Halicue gave me. And there it was, 5 of Pentacles, right? And I remember what she said, or I wrote it in the notes, your friends are everywhere. And at that point, I had felt the loneliest in my life. I was sitting here, in Vancouver. My ex-husband was at his house in Mexico, having a lovely vacation. I was taking care of our dog here. It was gray and rainy and winter. And you will make yourself, here comes the suffering, right? You will make it nothing was wrong. I was going through some health issues, but other than that, things were fine. But you will make yourself a even bigger cocoon of suffering. There were days I didn't even leave my house. Thank God I had my dog, because my dog would make me have to go out and just see the world. And I remember I would have friend after friend after friend call me up from California, from New York, from all over the world. How you doing, Karrie? What's going on, Karrie? I was just thinking about you, Karrie. I don't know why, but you were just on my mind. And they would ask me, what's going on? And I would tell them. And they would say, Karrie, go home. Go be with people that you can take care of you. Why are you up there? What are you? And it was my allegiance to suffering, because there was a part of me that felt really guilty about leaving the marriage. So it's like, well, here comes my punishment, right? This is all this medical stuff. See, here it go. And that was remembering that card. Woof, let me tell you the power of this. Remembering it and being able to be like, girl, let me get back home. This Halicue told me this months ago, right? But also the power of a tarot reading is that she could tell me where the rest of the story was going. And so the next card after that was the Page of Wands, which is where I currently am, which is that new beginning and that looking at things through this new lens of a newborn, right? Me going on a 4-country travel for 2 months this summer. I'm going to New York and Paris and Spain and South Africa, right? Couldn't even think about things like that back in when I was going through all this, right? And then that last card, King of Pentacles, which is like, everything's going to be all right, girl. And so we need that. Do not deny your magic is what I'm trying to tell people. You have these resources. You do not have to suffer through something. You do not have to be all alone. You do not have to be in solitary confinement. And you do not have to be punished. While we go through things, you do not have to be punished or punish yourself through them. So I just wanted to speak on it, about the power of this work. Thank you, Halicue.
Our modalities that we love, that we're obsessed with, that have helped us so much, and y'all will learn over time with us the way these methodologies have, without giving away too much of what Karrie and I talk about personally as friends, but what y'all will understand is that there's been some transformation in some amazing ways, and what helped facilitate the transformation, what kept us in constant dialogue about ourselves, helping us understand ourselves, has been our cards and our stars. Seriously. Like when I was the reason I picked up the deck is because I was hurting. I was hurting. I was a beautiful young woman who was well educated, had a young new marriage, a great job, who was miserable, so sad, like so broken, looking like, seriously, like we could be on the cover of Essence when I was a young baddie, like when I was in my early 20s. Like, y'all should have, really, like, if I hadn't gotten married early, I joke about this all the time, they would have had to run me out of town. But did not know myself, was miserable because I didn't know myself. All I was ever taught is what I was supposed to be for other people and how hard that was supposed to be and how I'd have to dedicate myself to it. We have facilitated a great deal of our transformation through these modalities, believe it or not, and how we used it to connect with the divine so that we could more vividly live out this life here on this third ride from the sun, like on this ride we're on right now. So I just want to say that. Keep listening. I promise y'all, if nothing else, it feels good. It's fun. And when we're having fun, it feels good. We're not hurting. We're not suffering.
Yes. We're not hurting. We're not suffering. And we're aligning our energy to what's next and what's for us. And that's when it gets really fun, is when you start seeing it show up in your life. Even when you're at your darkest and you have a card that shows up, there's a resonance. I know what that is. I see that. And now I can change it.
Karrie, let's give our loving listeners some heart work. Is there any, I know what I want to tell people to do about their chart, but like, what do you want people to do? Because I know what I'm doing. I know what my homework is, but I'm gonna let you assign your half of the homework.
I'm gonna go through my 3 steps to magic as your heart work. Okay. Working with your astrology chart. When you start to feel that suffering coming on, that allegiance to suffering, that, and it is seductive, just so you know, because you know it. Go to your chart and take a look at where your Saturn is placed on your chart. Don't run from the awareness. Dive into it. Take a look. Go look and see where your natal Saturn is, and then go and see where this Saturn is currently transiting, the area of life, and you will find it right there. This is where I am enduring something that doesn't have to be endured like this. This is where how can I play with this instead? How can I make this a fun game? Okay. And go and take a look at that 12th house. And especially for people who have planets in the 12th house, this won't come to you. This is not a conscious house. So make sure that you go see it and look at it and be aware of it, because when you're awake, you won't be aware of it. When you're asleep, you will, because it's the unconscious. Look at that, what's in your 12th house. Take a look at what's transiting your 12th house. Okay. And then the last step is that once you are aware of it and then you identify it, you can say, this is how long this is going to be going on. Then you get to let go of the suffering. Then you get to say, how can I play with this? Because I'm going to become a master at it. So it's just a matter of time. And so that's your little heart work from the astrology front.
If y'all have decks, or if you're getting into tarot, playing around with it, trying to figure out how you can use it as a tool to help you explore your own deep inner universe. Based on the cards that I shared today, the two things that felt loud to me and heavy as I was talking about them, that I feel that might be helpful for a lot of us that are listening, if not also for myself. First of all, I want us to think about the Nine of Swords, because what I thought, what hit me the hardest as I was working through this with everybody today was communication, and how sometimes we have the power to end things or to stop our suffering with our own words just by articulating a boundary or articulating how we really feel about something. So I would like, if you have your deck or you want to just use an app and check out this and ask yourself if by expressing my truth through one sentence to someone or some situation that is causing me pain, if it would automatically stop the pain and it was expressing my truth, what would it be? If I spoke the truth, if I spoke what I really felt, that I was really carrying in my mind and in my heart, and I said it out loud, what would that be? Write it down. Try to put it into a sentence and then be saying it to yourself. I'm not saying you have to go scream it at whoever it is it's directed at or whatever, but figure out what it is, because you might be in a position to do that. Or I certainly will invite you to consider that. So that's number one. Number two, the card of Drake. Drake always makes us want to feel like he's like this. I don't think Drake is like this all the time. He's freaking, let's Five of Cups. In his mind, he wants us to feel like this so bad. Five of Cups. I know a lot. Depression, sadness. I want to again call our attention to the two cups that remain. If we are in the fives, if we are in the depths of depression, and that's our suffering, right? It's a suffering of that suffering of the mind and the heart kind of mixed up together here, illustrated as cups. Let's focus on these two. What remains? Like, what do you have left over? Say it's a relationship, right? Cups are the suit of relationships. As an example of a relationship. And that was, say it's over. And you're experiencing what you should be feeling. Feelings, you and your feelings about it. You're sad, you're upset, head down, crying, as you should be. When you're able to stop crying, just think about, well, what remains? What remains? What have I learned? What have I gained? And how can that help sustain me in my movement forward? Getting over it, crying through it, and getting over the bridge. What remains, and how can it help me sustain as I get ready to pick it up and keep on moving, and hopefully move from a 5 into a 6 where things start getting a little bit more comfortable. So that is my heart work. Karrie, I just want to say thank you before I let you have the final word and take us out. Thank you for bringing up this topic. It is so good. I knew we had to put it up to the top. We just put this application back at the top of the pile. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I'm going to let you have the final word.
I just want to say that the final word on this is that we will probably keep having transmissions like this, Halicue, right? It's like because we are doing the work with you. And as we get tapped in, spirit shows up and says, this is the next thing. This is the next thing. And astrological transit says, this is the next thing. This is where we will bring that to you. So probably have a lot of like, oh, we just had to bring this to you. Why? Because we are tapped in, we are coded, and we're bringing those codes to you. So it is a pleasure to be of service to my fellow Black ladies, fellow Black magic women. And so we want you to take this heart work with you. We want you to use it. We want to identify where the suffering is. And we want you to start playing with life. That is the point of all of these modalities. Play with your life. It's a beautiful thing you've been given. And if you are here in a physical body, that means you're meant to do something with it. You're meant to experience. So don't just sit here. You're meant to expand. So yes, loving all of you and thanking all of you for your presence here today.
Melanated Mystics, we out. See y'all next week.